All right, boys and girls, so today we're going to continue our geometry unit, and today we're going to get to go onto an online geoboard. You might remember what a geoboard is from class from second grade. They are usually made of plastic, and they're flat squares with pegs on them in a grid or an array shape pattern. And then you could take rubber bands and link them onto the pegs, and you can stretch it out and make shapes. Like I just stretched it out and made a square. On a real geoboard, that you might have to worry about that rubber band breaking when you stretch it that big, but in this one, not so much because it's digital. So you can take a rubber band and make a triangle, stretch it around those pegs, or a parallelogram, or you could even make a trapezoid. So as you can see, there's a lot of uses, especially with geometry, for a geoboard. So today we're going to focus on the geoboards, and we're going to talk about partitioning the geoboards. So the basic pattern of a geoboard, you have your 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 pegs across the top, and then in every row, and then there's 5 pegs vertically in columns. But we're not going to focus on the pegs as much as we're going to focus on the spaces in between the pegs, because it naturally divides the geoboard up into square units. So we're not talking about the pegs, we're talking about the 4 rows that are in between the pegs and the 4 columns that are in between the pegs. So if you look, you have 4 rows and 4 columns, making the area of the spaces, the square units, 16. If I counted every single one of these squares, it's going to be 16. A typical question your teacher may ask is for you to divide your geoboard into 2 equal parts. And there are many different ways you could do it. One way would just be take a rubber band, stretch it down the middle, and then you have half over here and half over there, each one being the unit fraction 1/2. And then if you counted the squares or the square units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 squares in 1/2 of the geoboard, which makes sense since there are 16 total square units. So half of 16 is 8. You can divide it this way, sideways, which is this just rotated on its side. You could go diagonally, and then to count the squares, you have some whole squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 halves would be 7, and these 2 halves would be 8. And those are the typical ways when all the geoboard squares are lumped together, and that's the way that we like dealing with it because it's easier to see. But if we had a piece of paper and a pencil and we were shading the geoboard, you could even get more creative by shading half. These, like for example, in this one, you have 4 shaded in this row, and then this row got skipped, and then 4 shaded here. The green still has 8 shaded square units. Therefore, half of the geoboard is green and half of the geoboard is not green. And you could see some other examples of exactly half shaded. This is more of a checkerboard pattern, but if you counted, if there's 8 shaded out of the 16, then you know half is shaded. So that brings us to fourths or quarters. You can divide a geoboard up into 4 equal parts, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, or 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. Each chunk is the unit fraction 1/4, and they are all on a geoboard 4 square units, 1, 2, 3, 4. This fourth is 1, 2, 3, 4. They have to be equal square units in order to be considered fourths. So you can see this is the same thing turned on its side, so you know those are exactly the same. And then this is probably the more traditional way where it's like a plus. You divide it into like a plus symbol, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lumped together in the corner in the like quadrants. But then you get the creative ways. If you were shading, we have the 4 in the middle this time, or we have some halves together. That's 1, that's 2, that's the second one, second square unit. Then these 2 come together to make the third, and then the fourth. So that's 1/4 of the geoboard shaded. So you can see how you can get really creative and make patterns. We have 8 equal parts now, which would be only 2 of the square units. So this is the unit fraction 1/8. But you can see every single one of these is 2 unit fractions, 2 square units. And they're all worth 1/8 of the entire geoboard. So I can keep going and put 1/8 in all of these. Same thing with this, the 2 together, 2 together, 2 together, those are all 8s. On this one, we have 1/8 shaded because there's 2 squares shaded and then the rest of it is not shaded. So here's another example of 1/8. But we're going to go back to the 4, or oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Then there's also the 16th. So we have 1 out of the 16 shaded. And here's another creative way, 1/2 and 1/2 there. That's still 1/16 shaded. So now we're going to go back to the fourths. We'll take a look at the fourths again. And I wanted to show you something really quick about the fourths, where if you have 1/4 shaded and then you shaded another fourth, well, now it's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's half shaded, or 2/4. You could also do another fourth shaded, and that entire section that is shaded is considered not 1/4, but the whole thing would be 3/4 shaded. You could even do, let's see, what if you did all of them shaded? Well, we know that that would be worth, the part shaded would be worth 4/4, which is equal to 1 whole, right? One big dog, 1 whole. So I'm going to, it's not lined up, but you get the point. 4/4 is the same as 1 whole. Right here, this would be shaded. The whole thing would be shaded, or be considered 2/4. And 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. Okay, and then you could even take a look at your 8ths. 1 of the 8ths would just be 1/8, but you could also do 2/8 shaded, 3/8 shaded, 4/8. Here's an example of the green area is, oops, I thought that was on clone. The green area, hey, not the time. All right. The green area is shaded. Oh boy, come on. I'm trying to just make it say 8/8. So that green area is 8/8, not 8/8, 5/8. And then you have the 3/8 not shaded. And let's do, I don't know, let's do 7/8. 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7/8. So the pink area on this geoboard, I have 7/8 shaded, right? So you're just adding up each unit fraction to show you what fraction that is. So on a geoboard, if your teacher asked you just a simple question, why don't you divide this geoboard into 2 equal parts? You could just take a rubber band and cut it right down the middle. Or if your teacher said divide it into 4 equal parts, there's more than one way to divide it into fourths, but you should be able to show fourths. Or if your teacher asked you to divide it into 8 equal parts, you should know that they all need to be equal. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So those are the types of questions you can expect today on your exit slip Google form. So hopefully this has been helpful, and good luck.